Hey, lover.
Hey. Every episode starts the same way, us saying hey and then me cackling maniacally.
I read something recently. I meant to send it to you, but it was a New York Times article about the chemistry of podcast hosts.
Oh my God, we should be featured in that.
I shed at least 7 to 10 tears reading it because I was like, oh, it's an article about us.
Yeah, it's an article about us.
But they were saying that you can judge the quality of an episode by the peaks and valleys of the sound waves. And I was like, okay, then I think that makes us an A1 podcast.
Every single episode is really good because we make someone go partially deaf in every episode.
Someone's cheap Apple Airbud is popping at the seams.
Yeah. That's a beautiful way of determining a podcast good or bad.
This is what's my favorite part, which is it assumes that it basically means it doesn't matter what was said in those sound waves.
Right.
But that sound wave looks really good.
Oh yeah.
And if we're going based on the visuals of our sound waves,
she's thick.
She real thick.
Yeah, voluptuous.
Yeah, you hate to see her go, but you love to watch her leave our podcast.
For sure.
People are like, no, we love to watch you leave.
Yeah, they're like, actually, we wish that you would maybe go a little bit faster away from us.
My dear friend told me recently that she listens to us on 2-point-something speed.
2-point-something is that's damning.
Maybe I'm inflating those numbers, but it's a fast speed.
I'm okay with 1.5 and even 2 times speed, but
2.5, I feel like you couldn't even hear what we were saying
because I think I talk fast a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So it would be really fast.
Correct.
Also, I posted a TikTok right before I left here, and I'm having that feeling of my hands want to go look and see how many likes it has.
Well, we were discussing this. The days that we post about our show, I have to basically call in sick.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not getting any work done that day.
I'm my calendar is blocked from 10 a.m. until, maybe the end of the week. Because I feel like maybe things will keep trickling in at that point.
We have to field all of you actually do receive fan mail, basically.
I do. Well, we do through people I follow.
People that you know.
Right.
And then the people that I know, my sister did recently reveal to me that my mother told her in confidence that she finds my podcasting disturbing.
Okay, someone write that down and put it
just
on
quotes
and put it on Apple Podcasts.
5 stars.
Yeah,
disturbing.
5 star. That would be the sweetest thing that anyone's ever said.
Yeah, I'm still kind of trying to understand why it's disturbing, but I value that perspective.
Yeah, my parents came my parents in different words basically said the same thing. I feel like the first maybe, 15 episodes, I was talking a lot about my obsession with penises as a middle school girl.
That is true. We have revealed some things.
We've revealed some things. And my parents, whether they don't want to listen, but they force themselves to listen, I think, especially my dad. My dad will listen to us on long car trips.
I think, but your dad loves us.
Oh, he's obsessed, but he won't be able to look me dead. He won't be able to look me in the eyes for a couple days after an episode listen.
Accept that, you're not his little girl anymore.
No, certainly not.
And certainly you're obsessed with pee-pee.
I know. At that age, I was literally obsessed with pee-pee.
That's so interesting. I still think that's interesting. We could talk about that some more.
We certainly could. We'll save that for our Jungian analysis section of the podcast.
Just given the fact that I fully didn't even know what that was. Ken dolls were my anatomy lesson.
I'm really trying to understand where the obsession came from, because it's not it was that I grew up with little brothers, you know what I mean? It's not I was reared in an all girls environment. I mean,
they are kind of a great mystery of the universe. Maybe what is that?
Exactly. Maybe it's that, the great mystery. There's death and there's pee-pee.
Yeah. There's death and there's male anatomy.
Yeah. So this is precisely what I'm talking about. My parents will be listening to this.
On 3.8
on 3.999 on 3.1415 numbers of pi speed.
Make it stop.
Yeah. How did we get here? Oh, your mom was disturbed by what we talked about.
She's disturbed. And I think it might also be my solo podcast, which, to be fair, most people are disturbed by that one. So
not my.
Well, not you.
Not mine.
Not mine. But everybody else is, which is totally fine. I'm here to trigger people. I'm here to to shake things up.
Of course.
So
I do think
is
there's
good.
something very jarring about like listening to someone very familiar to you in your ears. Like I think that can be disturbing. Is a very interesting way to put it. But I think that's like a silly phenomenon because it's like it's a parasocial relationship with someone who you are objectively not parasocial with.
Yeah, I think it's also it depends on how much of yourself you have shown to that person, because if they're discovering new things and they think they really know you, then they're like, wait, they're questioning their reality.
Like, are we as close as I thought we were?
And especially with like my mom, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I have chosen to now. We don't need to get into fights about like trans issues anymore because we don't have to have those conversations.
Yeah, you can say fast forward to minute 15 of episode 13 of Floundering for my take on this.
Right. But she doesn't need to hear my takes on things.
No.
And so when she does, she's disturbed.
Of course, right. Because those aren't conversations that you guys have.
Right.
Together.
And that's why I didn't text her last night about the vice presidential debate, because I saw what Megyn Kelly was saying and that's all I needed to know. I was going to ask what Megyn Kelly was saying, but I actually just, maybe we move on from. She was like praising Jesus. Also, she's done something to her face. I don't really know what happened, but
Megyn Kelly, and like respectfully, of course, is the type of gal who has the biggest knockers ever and like a diamond studded cross laid in between them.
One of the more misogynistic things we've said on this podcast.
But she's like conditionally Jesus forward, if that makes sense.
Because of her knockers?
In spite of her knockers. Yeah. You can't be loving God.
Those are her God-given knockers.
Tits like that. Oh my God.
We have to be canceled now, I think.
No, actually, I think this will be our last one for a while while I kind of seek help.
Yeah, I'll do the podcast alone for a little bit.
I saw the second I said knockers, I saw you kind of recoil a little where you're like, no.
Well, I've just like never noticed hers, and I don't think she does have. But you're describing just like archetype, right?
Of course, yeah. For me to say she's the type of gal with big knockers and a diamond studded cross certainly doesn't bode well for the state of feminism in our country.
Right. Have you been familiar at all with this person, Pearl? Do you know Pearl? Okay.
Is she a TikTok?
She, like, I don't really know how she came into prominence, and her name is Pearl, and I don't know her last name, but she's like, I think was on TikTok or something. She's in a lot of videos and like she's interviewed by a lot of people, but she's like extremely stupid and like really annoying. Like there's nothing really good about her. I don't really know how she became who she is.
Sure.
But she's like she's like Gen Z Megyn Kelly.
Okay.
And
interesting.
She like goes around talking about
like a conservative pundit kind of.
Yeah, but like to an extreme, like talk misogyny. Like she really thinks like women are like too masculinized and like women need to be in the kitchen and like men are like pussies now.
Oh my God.
And men used to go to war and now they're in therapy.
What's her angle? Is she like a plant by the Trump camp? Like I'm confused what.
I don't know. She's like a mystery to me. And I look her up and I don't know if she has like active platforms anymore because of how much people hate her.
Okay.
But anyway, I don't really know why I just thought of her and was thinking,
probably because of what I just said about Megyn Kelly.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Pearl is also like such a fitting name for someone like that.
She like her existence really disturbs me. That's disturbing.
Anything. No, exactly. 100%.
But I think my mom would really like her. Unfortunately, maybe she should be her daughter.
Yeah. Wait, before we move on, because I'm like recoiling from what I said about pee and boobs. It's already, I'm like, we'll erase it. No worries. Can you share with the crowd what you've been training AI to do with regards to reviews about our pod?
You don't even know the half of it. Because when you were in France, I went buck wild.
Wait, a quick comment on that. When I was like leaving to get in the car to go to the airport, I feel like you said something. You were like, what's going to happen to the podcast? I was like, well, I'm gone for 7 days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you said you were coming back on the 30th, and that was going to be like the day,
Several days before we were
posting a podcast. And famously, it was your turn to edit. And I was like, I'm not trying to edit this one, but like I will if we have to. But
no, we left on a sour note. I felt that.
No, and it was my fault because of the scrunchy gate.
Scrunchy gate was tough. You were like, I didn't know you were going. And also, where the fuck is my scrunchie? It's like, I think it's in your bag.
I couldn't even absorb the fact that you were leaving the country.
Right.
Because I was so consumed by my search for my scrunchie.
The scrunchie to this podcast is over pipeline was really, that was a well-oiled pipeline that I wasn't prepared for.
This podcast is what makes me lose my scrunchie. We're done. Like, yeah. I'm not doing this anymore.
I know. And to think that like, I felt to blame.
And you were not to blame, but I am so aware of the fact that I do that. Like anytime anything is wrong, I'm like, someone else is responsible and it's not me.
Yeah. The note we ended on was scrunchie's gone, podcast is over. And then I was in the car kind of like, where do I go from here? And then I had a text from you and it was like, hee. And it was a picture of the scrunchie
Folks,
on your lap.
My scrunchie was in my bag.
The scrunchie was in her bag.
This bag that I got from Amazon, it has like multiple different pockets and I'm still getting used to it. And it was in one of the pockets that I didn't know existed.
So I also have an Amazon travel bag. And like, I am finding things in that bag like months after I use it. Like the pockets and the hiding places are endless in that bag.
Yeah.
Like I pulled it out thinking it was completely empty, full thing of Tums, and another pocket full thing of Pepto.
$5,000 worth of gold.
Yeah, exactly.
Gold bars.
A gold tooth, someone's finger. Yeah, we had a trip.
France was crazy.
France was nuts.
No, I am responsible for the vibes being bad, but you sprung that on me, to be fair.
I know, but it's funny because I think that you just exist in like the confines of my brain. So I just assume that you were totally aware of my travel happenings.
I had no idea. And you've been traveling so much that I just assumed I was home free for the rest of the year.
Honey, I did too. Just so we're getting it out in the open, I do travel next weekend for a wedding. I know. But that's my last one. And then I actually am home free.
Okay, well, I'm going.
No, don't say it.
I'm going somewhere in 4 weekends.
Are you kidding?
For a wedding.
Where?
Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with her work.
Yeah.
Robert E. Lee.
Love her.
Appomattox Courthouse.
I didn't get a +1, which totally makes sense since I'm single.
Sure.
But I also was kind of like, maybe they'll give me one and I'll find someone. Because what are all these movies where it's like, I have a +1 to this wedding, but like I don't have, who's going to be my date? And it's like, that's just not how things are anymore. Is that how things ever were?
Well, I think in the era of like in the salad days of rom-coms maybe, but I don't know if that like actually happens. I guess I've been to like, if you're close enough to the bride and groom or you're like in the wedding party and you don't technically have a cigo, they might be like, yeah, bring whoever.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't. Also, I feel like there's some kind of setup that's like, I had a +1, but we broke up like right before the wedding. And so now I have to find somebody new.
Now I have to meet someone on a Greyhound bus.
And fall in love.
While I hold a pumpkin spice latte.
Just to go off of this, since we're just tangenting for this first.
I'm like, did we start recording?
I want it to be over already.
Me too. I want to erase so much of what I said. I feel so strange about the Megyn Kelly knocker
I'm sorry.
comment.
I shouldn't have made you feel bad about that.
Well,
but
no,
I was trying to call you in.
I know, and I'm happy you did. And I'll never say something about her big old knockers ever again.
I also just got like a character.
Okay, gross.
Sorry about that, everyone.
I did mean to ask you though, which is wholesome, what the AI, ChatGPT said about our podcast.
It can't be true anymore now that we've gotten this far and we've managed to alienate all of our listeners. But yeah, I've been working with ChatGPT pretty deeply lately.
Doing a lot of deep analysis with ChatGPT.
I mean, seriously, but I won't go too far into it. But I did receive some advice from a manifestation guru that was so amazing and I loved it. And so I started to implement it on ChatGPT. And that led me to basically asking ChatGPT to write positive reviews of my podcast. And I also, interestingly, I didn't tell you this part, but I had it write negative reviews too, about not about us, but about my other podcast, just to like kind of give myself a sense for like what they're gonna say.
No, that's smart. I feel like it's kind of like it's like debate prep. It's like what are the attack ads going to be?
Right.
Like yeah.
And it was helpful. And it did hurt my feelings, but then I said,
did you feel like oddly seen by the negative?
Yeah, it
comments?
was all things that like made perfect sense to me, and like I knew like it was all valid critiques.
Sure.
And then I was like, I typed into ChatGPT, I was like, I guess everybody gets positive and negative feedback. And they were like, of course.
Oh my God. It breaks my broken little heart. I guess people can't be perfect. ChatGPT's like, yeah, for sure.
No, the number of times that I have been like, I really can't afford to have some kind of medical issue where I have an aneurysm and die, or get murdered and die. Like, I can't afford this because I haven't deleted my ChatGPT history yet. And it's like, do I need to be doing this every day just in case?
No, I think that's good hygiene for sure. Just kind of like,
I can't have people seeing the conversations that we be having on there.
No, certainly not.
I
think that's actually like a good, that's like a living will kind of, you know what I mean? Where it's like, and every morning in the event of the worst case scenario, I clear my chat history.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did feel it was cool to, because I feel like we've gone through the exercise so many times of like trying to articulate to everyone what this is. And it was like very eye-opening and refreshing to see that like reflected back.
Well, also,
in a way that was like very succinct and clear to me.
What was so interesting was that, and I think I told you this, but I didn't really give ChatGPT that much information about us. Like I had told it a little bit about me, but I knew nothing about you. And I just said like, we have a comedy podcast where we talk about stuff. And automatically they knew that like I was the spiritual one and you were the funny one.
Oh my God. Which is not true. FYI.
No, but like
I'm the insensitive one.
I'm
the woman hating one. We've learned.
Yeah, sure. I the way that my brain is operating today,
no, I know
it's not good. Like,
no,
it's
I mean
not
we're literally like halfway
podcast.
through our time here, and
no, I'm like scared. I feel like what's that?
I'm scared.
I feel like Simone Biles getting lost in the air.
Oh,
I'm like,
the twisties.
Yeah, I feel like I'm have the twisties for podcasting right now.
Whoa, same
which is real, and it's mental illness, and we need to be
we need
extending
visibility.
compassion to your gold medal winning podcasters who sometimes have an off day.
No, exactly. We need the same grace that a gold medal Olympian gets for
I agree.
A D-list yapper should have the same level of grace. I agree.
But yeah, I just think that ChatGPT is actually very intuitive. Like it knows stuff that it shouldn't. Oh, you know what else was crazy? When I was first telling it about my solo podcast. So the way that I had it do it was that I asked it to tell stories first. I was like, tell a story about a girl named Carey who X, Y, and Z. And it's like, it's supposed to be like a manifestation technique because manifestation is all about like narrative and storytelling.
Yeah.
And so I had to do that. And I was like telling it about my podcast, and it goes, it's like started blah, blah, blah. And it's like, Carey started a podcast called Self-Centered. And I was like, the fact that you knew what my podcast was, also my podcast, basically the title of it is essentially AI generated, which is hilarious.
Wait, that's nuts. So it told you the title of your podcast without you telling it that.
Yeah.
It that.
Which is kind of freaky.
She, he, they is wise.
Wise beyond its year.
It's year. It's single year.
Anyway, enough talk about podcasts.
Yeah, it's too meta for me a little bit. Should we get into our flip and flop?
Let's do it.
Okay.
So flip or flop is a segment that we do on this podcast in the beginning to set us straight, to get us on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
And it's where we take the time that we spent apart, which in this case spanned many miles, and we share either a high, a flip, or a low flop. Even though our time apart is always bad, sometimes there's good things that happen occasionally. So yeah, I guess I can go.
Yeah.
My flip, I'm going to get like so present here.
I know. I actually feel this is a good opportunity for us to kind of like clear the slate and start over. Go for it.
Okay. Presence is like really important. My flip is that I am, for the first time ever in human recorded history, going to meet my Goodreads goal this year.
Go off, girl.
Thank you. I've been doing this quirky little thing for the past like 6 or 7 years on Goodreads where I set a goal in the beginning of the year. They encourage you to do that. And I never meet it. And in fact, I vastly undershoot. Like last year, I think my goal was like 22 books and I read 7.
Yeah, 22 is a lot though,
So,
dude.
okay. So what I was doing was like, I kept like not meeting my goal. And then the next year I like made the goal higher. Like that was going to work somehow to like motivate me. And so this year I said, let me cut it. Let's make it really small, doable, manageable. That's how you're supposed to live, I think.
Yeah.
And so I made it 15.
Okay.
And I have currently read 13. And I did just pick up Sally Rooney's Intermezzo. So I know what my next read is.
I've heard fantastic
Me too.
things.
I'm very excited.
So that implies that you're reading on some months more than one book. That is really impressive to me.
Thank you.
See, for me, I'm like, if I can do a book a month, that's monumental for me. I have sicknesses with books where I can't read 2 books at once.
Oh.
And if I start a book, even if I don't like it, I am like contractually obligated to finish it.
Yeah.
And that's like a blood oath that stays between me and my God.
Sure.
Personally, respectfully. But it does significantly slow the pace of what I'm able to read in a year.
Yeah, I think it's really just been a forcing mechanism, like having so much solitude and then having my journey with sobriety. Like reading has just kind of been something that has naturally come back in. And I'm like really connecting to like the inner child version of myself who I loved reading, like growing up in middle school and high school. Like that was my shit.
Have we talked about that? I can't remember if this was like something we talked about or if it's something I read. All of those blend together anyway.
Yeah.
But how like books when we were little were kind of like our little form of social media. Like we kind of felt like naughty reading in the back of cars. Like it was like our little world that we could immerse ourselves in.
I don't think we've talked about that.
Oh,
that's interesting though.
Yeah. Where it was basically just like, it was our form of like escapism.
Yeah. I mean,
which was now we know so much more healthy.
Doom
than what we do
scrolling
now.
in 2011 was me staying up until 3 a.m. to finish The Fault in Our Stars.
Certainly.
And then staring into the mirror and sobbing uncontrollably.
Yeah. And getting like a little horny about a kissing scene. Oh, I miss those days.
I miss those days too. I miss like, this is my one gripe is that like, I haven't been like swept up in like a romance book, like literally since I was 16.
It's funny. I was talking to someone recently about like the last time you felt like so magnetically pulled to a book that like it's actually all you can think about. Because I feel like that happened to us a lot when we were little. Like again, like Fault in Our Stars. It's like I have to leave dinner right now and go upstairs and
I'm like every moment of the day I'm thinking about it, and I have like full body. Like I used to get this like full body experience where like I guess it was maybe like excitement or something. I don't know, but I don't know what that is anymore.
I know. I'm wondering if that's just like reading still kind of being new to us, or if it's like, I don't understand. I don't understand like why we were so engrossed with it then and maybe less so now. I know plenty of people who are like voracious readers and still get that. But like, anyway, the last time that happened to me recently was the book A Little Life.
Ooh.
By Hanya Nagirihara.
Yeah,
that's how you pronounce her name.
I know is reading that.
Holy hell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like it takes you on it's like a 600 to 700 page book.
Yeah.
But that was the last book I read where I was like, I actually have to leave this meeting right now and go read this in the bathroom for 20 minutes, respectfully.
What an amazing experience that is. Like I long for that. And I'm excited to continue my reading journey and hopefully have that. I did have that with Long Island Compromise.
I was going to say, I feel like you were, it might have been the first time we recorded here, but I walked out of the Uber and it was clutched to your chest in like a very like that book is special
Very Hermione
to her.
Granger way. Yeah.
in a very like that's a special book type of way.
Yeah.
But I also love oh my God, I'm blanking on her name.
Taffy Brodesser. I don't know how to pronounce her name.
I was going to call her Tassie, but yes,
Is
Taffy.
it Taffy?
It's Taffy.
That's a crazy name.
It's
Love her though.
It's nutty, but like only she could do it.
Yeah.
Fleischman is in Trouble was also one of those books where
Yeah,
I was
that's
like,
on my list.
I can just sit and read for. I feel like a lot of books I read now when I'm kind of in the back of my head being like, when can I like
Stop
dog ear the
reading.
page and stop reading?
Yeah.
But that was one where I was like, oh, gotta keep it going. Gotta keep it ticking.
Yeah, I love that feeling, and I've been getting that more lately, which is good. If anyone has like, I also, yeah, I think like with the romance of it all, like that used to be like a huge, like amazing experience for me to like have two characters that like fall in love or like have amazing chemistry or just like get each other. And I wonder if it's like something having to do with just like the dystopian like world of dating today and like I'm jaded or something, but like I just haven't gotten that feeling yet. So if anyone has any recommendations, let me know.
That can put that little tingle in your tummy.
Yeah. I'm looking to feel something.
I feel like it's also, maybe I tried to say it earlier and it didn't come out.
Megyn
right.
Kelly's Knockers.
I'm thinking of Megyn Kelly's Knockers.
Oh, there's a book called Megyn Kelly's Huge Knockers.
Yeah, it's her memoir. You might be familiar with it. My Huge Knockers, a book by Megyn Kelly.
A story of resilience.
A story of bouncing back up. Of falling down and bouncing back up again. I mean, do I even try to make the point that I was going to try to make? Yeah. Okay, so romance books now, not getting the spark that you did back then. That I feel like when we were reading Fault in Our Stars and sorry, whoa,
sorry,
kind of like let me kind of bring it back to reality here.
Yeah,
we were learning about those things for the first time,
right?
Like all of those experiences were brand new. At least when I was like reading a book like A Fault in Our Stars, I had no romantic experience, period. So like it was a very getting to experience it for the first time through these characters type of moment. And now it's like, to your point, we're like hardened by it all. We've seen it all. Even books that do a good job of like casting romance in like a way that feels appealing, you're kind of like, but I know it's bullshit. So
right, that's I could do actually now of course that we're here, I have a million ideas for topics I want to talk about in this podcast. But there was like when I was, of course, growing up, I only had sisters. I went to all girls school. I did not have access to boys at all.
So curious that I was the PP obsessed one and
right.
You were the Ken doll.
Was the Ken doll kind of like
ogler.
There's nothing going on there.
Sure.
But I feel like I had an intuitive sense that like every YA romance that I was reading had a romanticized like concept of boys. Like I knew that boys weren't like that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like I knew they weren't like nice and like funny and like interesting.
Yeah.
Except for Maxim.
Of course. The only one. The only one.
The only one.
And Connor, of course, wherever he is.
He hates us and will never come back.
He literally wrote down on a Post-it note, if Floundering is recording, let me know and I will not be in the stew that
near the
day.
premises whatsoever.
Yeah.
He has a restraining order against our podcast.
But yeah, no, exactly.
But I remember like wanting to live in that fantasy, like just wanting to be like, maybe they are like that though.
Yes.
And now I think as an adult, you know, I want my books to kind of reflect at least some element of reality. Like I don't want it to be outlandish to the point where I can't like feel it, you know? And so if there were to be like a character that's like really nice and like funny and like witty and interesting, that would be unrealistic. So
I think it's why Sally Rooney's books have taken off the way they have.
Yeah.
And like, again, I think that they're maybe not the best example because I feel like some of like the love plots are just like a little hard to believe. But I do think they do a good job of like casting love in a kind of ugly light sometimes.
Yeah.
And in a way that's like so specific to someone who's not, who's someone who's like 30 and below. You know what I mean?
It's not like aspirational really, but it is like deep and like there's some element of like reality to the connections between the characters.
Yeah. Like the love is always really flawed. There's always a reason why they can't be together or shouldn't be together, but they still have to be together.
The women are waif-like and tiny and beautiful.
And random and quirky,
ugly.
but also played by, what's her name? Daisy Edgar Jones.
Edgar Jones,
Yeah.
my nemesis.
The quote, unsightly hag from Cork City.
Absolutely insane.
So anyway, you met you're
Anyway,
gonna meet your goal.
I'm meeting
That's
the goal.
incredible.
I mean, barring any like huge, I don't want to like speak too soon because obviously I haven't met it yet.
Sure.
But it's looking like I will. And I don't know, accomplishing things is cool. I feel like there was a podcast episode that we did about like goal setting and like,
yeah.
I've definitely had a weird relationship to like goals as a concept. And so to like meet one is very a new feeling for me. So
It's also very like we did talk about this because I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing like dry whatever. I did successfully do dry January. And then February 1st was like the wettest day of my goddamn life. But there's something that's like very achievable with something that's time bound or like numerically bound where it's like, it's only 31 days. And then with you, it's like, oh, it's 15 books.
Yeah.
Like there's a start and there's an end.
totally.
And I feel like those goals that are like a little more nebulous where it's like, I'm going to be better this year is like much harder.
I'm going to be hot, cool, funny, and awesome.
So yeah, that's my last gasp at a thought.
So let's hear your flop or flip.
Oh, it's a flop. As we've discussed, it did go on a trip. The trip was great. It's a shame that we all can't be, that we can't have French parents that would, allow us to live in France all the time. France is a magical place.
I love France.
I love France.
Vive la France. I'm sorry for that.
Did you ever go to the cafe Vive la France?
No, what is that?
Man, did they have a croque madame that would make your head spin.
And why don't they have like croque madame needs to be more of a thing here.
I completely agree. They were serving them over there like it was, like a turkey club sandwich. It was just like, yeah, you can have, it's a staple.
It's delicious.
It should be a staple in these parts.
So tell us about your trip.
Okay, so the trip was great, but have you been seeing these like Instagram, TikTok, whatever trends of people like getting ready for long flights?
No. I've seen people like packing.
Okay, so these are like, again, we've discussed this. My For You page is all over the place, but
it's surprising that I wouldn't have that though, because I love like get ready with me's. I love like packing videos and stuff.
Yeah, and like I love packing videos. I'm like all about packing efficiency. Like how can you cram the most into a carry-on? So like it's no surprise that this fell into my lap, but it's this very like interesting niche of traveler who they travel in economy and they're like long hauler flights, like someone who's traveling from like Singapore to LA. And the fucking goodie bag of things that they have to make that flight tolerable is buck wild. Like they have leg hammocks and
leg hammocks.
A leg hammock.
Is it what it sounds like?
It's exactly what it sounds like, and it basically like clips into the sides of your tray when it's folded up, and you like place your feet in it so that they kind of are in a hammock.
And is it like you are leaned back? Like, is it to facilitate sleep?
Yes. It's kind of like so that you don't have to like cross your legs or try to shove your feet under your seat if there's a backpack under it. Like it's meant to kind of like put less pressure on your feet.
I'm not sure about that, but
certainly I'm not either. Yeah. There's another one where it's like an eye mask that clips onto the headrest so that your head doesn't like bobble back and forth.
Oh, that's kind of innovative.
There are like neck pillows that are actually like Velcro neck braces so that you can like comfortably lean to one side without your head like whatever knocking over to one side. And I saw the content before the trip and I was like, that is absurd. And then lo and behold, we're on this 9-hour flight. I have nothing to prepare me for sleep despite taking off at 10 p.m. So it's like a perfect time to descend into sleep. Mm-hmm. And we were in the back of the plane. We were by the toilet.
Oof.
So, and the other toilet broke.
No.
So we had this like constant stream of people in and out of the toilet that was next to us. So every time the door opened, bright light flashes on our seats. I don't have a neck pillow. I don't have a leg hammock. I don't have a neck brace. I don't have any of these things.
You don't have a Zanny?
I don't have a Zanny.
That's all you need, really.
I know.
All these accoutrements, you don't need that. You just
I know.
need a
And I do
Zanny.
have friends who can help. I do have friends in high places.
Yeah.
And then I have friends with physician parents. And that feels important. But anyway, my flop was the trip over there and the absolute fucking toll it took on my body. I woke up and a flight attendant was like, "Whoa, do you need ice?" She was like, "Are you okay?"
For what?
I was basically like craned over on my tray trying to sleep the entire flight.
You became the Hunchback of Notre Dame. They needed
absolutely.
you.
And I put my coat over my head because I didn't have an eye mask. So she truly might have thought that I had Timbuktu'd
Yeah.
mid-flight.
Damn, that's rough.
But yeah, she came over and like instead of a tap on my shoulder, it was like 2 fingers on my pulse. Like, girl,
are you with us?
A sign of life would be helpful for the Delta community.
Yeah, I've been contending with the idea that I might be going to Australia. I'm not sure. I need to like have money first, but my friend is getting married. She lives in Australia.
Where in Australia?
I think the wedding is in Perth.
Okay.
I'm not sure. But anyway, that's a really long flight. And I am such a person that I really just want to do it like
the right way.
And
Yeah.
I mean first class.
Yep.
And that is like $20,000 or some shit. So
yeah,
I'm not really sure how that's going to happen.
But you know what? I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, if you're not traveling all the time and like it's one long flight, you might as well, like what your body would have to go through in economy for a 20-hour flight versus the like financial toll of just preserving your physical selfdom. Like that is a price worth paying in my mind.
If it was like $5,000, I would do it.
Is it literally $20,000?
I don't know if it's $20,000, but it's like a lot.
Yeah. See, post this. It wasn't even like a terrible flight by any stretch, but it was like the perfect cocktail of things gone just wrong enough where I was like, I'm going to land where I'm going and be in a bad mood for at least 24 hours to let my body kind of like offboard off of the physical brutality that it experienced.
There's nothing more to me like that experience of constantly like being interrupted or like having someone walking by all the time. Like that is really aggravating to my system.
Oh my God. Well, as someone who gets overstimulated quickly, like sensory overload is a very real thing for me and getting much worse with age.
It's getting so bad.
Yeah. Like if I'm walking the dog and the dog is pulling and there's a loud bus break and like a child is to my left, I'm like, we gotta pause. Like Bruce Almighty has to pause what's happening here, move some people around.
Yeah.
So that I can make it home in one piece.
I was like walking and there like somebody was driving by on one of those like loud motorcycles.
No.
And I like almost screamed.
Yeah.
Like, and it took me a while to like get back to normal because I was genuinely like frightened.
Yeah.
It's not good.
No, and it's hard to know. I wonder if it's like correlated to just like my general, like when I'm anxious, I feel like all my senses are heightened a little bit. And I've always rolled my eyes at the people who like hold their ears when an ambulance goes by in New York. Where I'm like, you're not a New Yorker.
Yeah, you're pathetic.
I literally caught myself doing it the other day.
Yeah.
Plugging my own ears.
I did that recently.
I was like, I hope no one saw that.
Well, I think also with the noise canceling headphones of it all, like I've adjusted to a new normal.
Which is just deafening silence at all times. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So I'm sorry that was your experience though. That's like that's like a form of like the sleeplessness of it and then having to be in a foreign country where it's like morning there.
Landing and trying to get yourself excited about the trip.
Right, exactly.
Where it's like, actually, no, I need to see a chiropractor.
Right,
like,
and I'm pissed that I even decided to do this.
Right, no, I'm mad that we wasted money on those flights.
And the French population is like horrible now.
Yeah, and they're like not happy that I'm here, period. So anyway, yeah, total flop. But the flip is that I think I am now laser focused on doing everything that I can in my power to travel in luxury.
Optimizing.
I'm going to get the right cards.
Yeah.
I'm going to get global entry. I'm going to find the friend with the Xanax prescription. Like, I'm going to do it the proper way.
Yeah.
Next time.
Do it right.
I'm going to do it right.
Well, keep me posted on that.
I will, of course.
I'll just be in my apartment not taking flights. And that's totally fine.
We know you're traveling with all of your friends in the books that you're reading.
That's so true.
You're taking so many trips.
Going on inner journeys through my psyche.
Yes.
And that's an adventure in itself.
Well, I actually think that this is a good time to transition to a topic that I wanted to bring up with you.
Sure.
Which is this idea of like how you view yourself and things that either like conform to that identity or don't.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why the flight was so grating to me is because I view myself as someone who loves comfort and who loves, like nice things. And then to find myself broken from the neck down on a flight was a very like grating and like a threat to what I view myself as, which is a woman of luxury. I
mean, I think that experience would break a lot of people.
Sure.
Like that's just uncomfortable
of course. And it's a bad example.
As being in a human body. Yeah.
It's a bad example. But I listened to a podcast recently that I shared with you about like the notion of a comfort zone.
Right.
And having like things that feel comfy to you that keep you in your comfort zone, maybe for too long.
Right.
Versus uncomfy things that you should be gravitating towards that might take you out of your comfort zone, but you don't want to do it because they're uncomfy.
Yeah, this is a thing I've been working on in therapy for like 20 years.
Yeah, it was just like I felt very like, I like really identified with the podcast. Like I listened to it and was like, I have to talk about this with you.
Yeah.
And the flight example was obviously my like botched attempt at a transition, but I really want to get your thoughts on it.
I wasn't in my comfort zone because people kept going to the bathroom.
I wasn't in my comfort zone because I actually broke my spine.
I didn't have a neck pillow, so that was not my comfort zone.
Yeah, we'll massage that. We'll massage that transition. Not my best.
Yeah, well,
I've had better.
Yeah, I have thoughts about this because the podcast talked about like the concept of ego syntonic versus ego dystonic. Which, do you want to explain that?
Sure. Yeah, because I did have to. I've had to refresh my brain on it a couple times, but basically, we have an ego. An ego is how we view ourselves for the most part. It's like the governor of who we are. And if something is ego syntonic, it conforms with your self view. So if I'm someone who loves, stability, an ego syntonic behavior might be like staying at a job for a very long time. And the converse of that is like, again, if I'm someone who likes stability, an ego dystonic thing might be getting laid off from my job. So that's kind of like the basic premise is that if something is syntonic, it conforms with your self-view. And if something is dystonic, it doesn't align with how you view yourself.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting when they talked about like ego syntonic behaviors that should be ego dystonic.
Yes.
Like as in you like, or like you identify as something that is where the actions that you're taking align with you and they feel right to you, but they're not actually like good for yourself or like the world.
They gave an example of like someone who doesn't pay taxes, where like the person viewed themselves as kind of like self-starter is not the right word, but someone who like didn't need a governor, like someone who was like really independent and like didn't feel like felt like systems of like institutions were overbearing, like someone who was like, I can do it my own way. Like, I don't need systems to tell me how to behave.
Yeah.
And as an action of that, like wasn't paying their taxes. And the people on the podcast were like, that's actually like the hardest type of person to do therapy with, because they, in their mind, believe that their self is centered with that behavior. Like there's nothing that's grading up against how they view themselves. It's just like, this is who I am. And I've rationalized why this is okay for me.
Yeah. It all just kind of made me I've been very interested in like the idea of self-concept for the past like year, which was not something that I really understood.
Mhm.
For a while, I always thought self-concept and self-esteem were like interchangeable. Like either you feel good about yourself or you feel bad about yourself. But like self-concept is like who you think you are, like characteristics that you think you have, and how everything basically in your life like stems from that. So if you can like change the way you perceive yourself, you become a different character, and then that character does different actions and stuff.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I mean, I've definitely had this experience over time just because I used to write in a online journal back when I like was trying to understand myself more. But I didn't want to like write in a physical journal. And then sometimes that company emails me and is like, here's what you wrote 6 years ago. And there was one that came up this week that I always kind of read them just to like see what I was doing. And it's always very, I don't know, it's nice. But I like had for many years of my life, like a self-concept idea that I was not a creative person and that like, I really want to express myself. I was always having this like tension between like, I feel like I want to express myself, but like that sucks because I'm not creative and like I have no talents. And then it's like, but
the act of writing in that journal
like
to begin with
literally
is like,
doing it.
Yeah, a creative act.
And so now, of course, like it's funny because it's 2024 and I like fully view myself as a creative person. And like, of course I am. Like it's such a given at this point, but that wasn't always the case. And so, yeah, it's like you change your self-concept and then you change your life and it's cool.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Well, it brought me back to like one of our like Genesis episodes of this podcast where we were just talking about like barriers that we've confronted to kind of like reach a point in our life where we feel like we're our best selves or like a more complete version of ourselves. And it made, because I completely relate to the self-concept thing. And I think it has a lot to do with like the example I tried to give about like stability and consistency. And like I view myself as like a very, even though it might not present that way, like I am kind of like a rigid person. Like I have a hard time kind of like letting go of routines. I have a hard time, like I have a really hard time with uncertainty. And like when we were talking about, you know, feeling maybe like a little bit stuck in our jobs, I was like, but actually that's okay because it's like, that's just a pattern that I know and can predict. And like, I would almost prefer that than potentially being on the other side of something that's really good, but having to deal with a lot of certain uncertainty to get to that point.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, like I think together it's been this is why I love doing this. Cause I feel like we're able to kind of like change our self-concept a little bit together.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's trippy because I was thinking about this because we were talking about it also in the context of addiction. And like I've obviously been, as I've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, trying to change my relationship with weed. And I was talking to someone about this recently, about how like I developed an identity of like I'm a stoner.
Yeah.
And I took pride in that. And I also like, I feel like I clung to it as a way to like justify the behavior kind of. It's like, well, this is just who I am.
Yeah.
And now that I'm like trying to change and be different, it's like that aspect of my identity also kind of has to be like sacrificed. And I do think that's what people talk about with like ego death. It's like, okay, that aspect of me can't really move forward in this new version if this is where I'm going. Yeah. So there is, it's like you have to kind of go through that process.
Yeah. I thought like the most interesting part to me was what you had mentioned, which was like you would assume that syntonic is good and dystonic is bad, but like what you're describing is like the dystonic thing is actually what's better for you, which is like a sober identity that is in conflict with your identity as a stoner.
Yeah.
But smoking weed is very at the time in line with how you viewed yourself, which was as a stoner, which is syntonic. But when you like zoom out over time, probably not like the best thing for you. Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. And also I just think like what you were saying about how like the ego is like the way that we view ourselves. Like it just kind of makes you realize that like so much of what you take as like a given about you and your personality is just like something else. Like
Yeah.
nothing is like fixed. And like you might have a concept that you like need stability or whatever, but that might like, if you dig deeper, like where is that? You know, like where did that actually come from? And like, you know, you could probably look at the fact that you like moved around some like growing up and how like you were
Right.
always wanting to like, you know, that stability would be important to have in like those situations, moving different countries and everything.
Totally.
So it's like that may have served you back in the day, but like maybe rigidity as an adult, you know, might need to be loosened upon a little bit, just if you're gonna like, you know, do something like this and like kind of be a little crazy and kooky.
Yeah. And like be okay with like imperfection and things not going well 100% of the time. And yeah, like submitting yourself to an unknown, which could be good or bad.
Because I had that same thing too with like with money and stuff. Like when I left college, I was like, well, since I don't know who I am and I'm never going to be anything cool, I'll just try to focus on making money.
Yeah.
And then like that kind of became my identity of like, well, I have to feel safe and like I have to have stability financially if I'm going to be okay.
Right.
And it wasn't until like COVID and I quit my job and everything that I was like, well, whatever. Like, who cares?
But that's so interesting because it like, you did have to have kind of like an out of this world experience to get there.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to, it's so hard to kind of like to know in your brain that like there's probably a better way, but like, I don't know, our egos feel so fixed in a moment in time that it can be like very hard to kind of like detach from that. And I'm thinking about like, I don't know, the danger of being like told something or the danger of you being told that you're something at a young age, like you're a jock.
That's
or
huge, yeah.
Like, I don't know, you're like discombobulated or a little all over the place. I feel like this actually happens a lot with like, this can be the peril of birth order sometimes, where it's like, oh, you're like just a youngest sibling. Like you are like the favorite, or, you know, like you don't know how to do anything because parents did it for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like it takes like being told that once or twice at like a really fragile age for that to become like a really fixed identity.
Totally.
And like the longer it takes for you to confront that identity, the harder it is to kind of like decouple yourself from it.
Yeah, that just also made me think about how like even if it's not about you, you may start to identify as things based on like the perceptions of others in your environment. Like I remember growing up in taking the idea that artists are inherently fucked up. Like, I don't know why.
That's something that's like kind of, I don't know. I feel like that's something that like a lot of parents like inculcate in kids.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. Cause again, it's like,
they just think every artist is like chopping off their ears like Van Gogh. Like some of us are just, I mean, we are
chopping off our ears proverbially.
Yeah. And we're doing it like in a healthy way. But like I remember thinking like, oh, well, I shouldn't be an artist because that means that I'm fucked up and that I'm going to be like destitute and homeless.
You know what's really interesting? Not to bring it back to France, but
bring it back to France.
My cousin is married to a French woman, and
Beautiful.
both of them are artists. My cousin's a musician, among other things, and she's a visual artist. And they met here, but like very quickly after they got married, we're like, oh, wow, we're absolutely moving to France. And when I asked her why, she was basically like, because art is considered a job in France.
Oof.
Like art is a profession. You are paid by the government in some cases to be an artist for a living. Like it's a trade. It's not something frivolous or like, you know, indulgent. Like you are contributing something to society when you're an artist. So like here we're just viewed as the people who want to like scratch some crazy itch or we don't, we're viewed as people who like couldn't make it in a real job. But in France, we're considered as important as like a banker or a plumber, or like we have a function in France.
Such an interesting cultural difference that I never thought about.
Yeah, because here it's like art is an indulgence. Like we view it as something like extra.
I wonder too, like that just made me think that like, because we have such a, nowadays, like with the accessibility of creating, it's like we have a glutton, like there's so much of like stuff.
Right.
And I mean, we don't call it art, we call it content.
Sure.
And I wonder if there's some kind of like rebellion in that, because it's like, well, if you're not going to value this, then I'm just going to put out the stupidest shit ever that you've ever seen.
And get paid for it. And fuck you.
And fuck you.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
That's a good way of putting it too. Cause yeah, you're right. It's like, there's, like the excess of content as a form of like rebellion that we can't treat art seriously.
Right. Like you're like the whatever societal powers that be don't value it. So therefore we don't value it.
Watch me not value it and still make money.
Right.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And that is my vibe for sure. Yeah. I mean, like as I sit here kind of two brain cells trying to eke out this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, we started with Megyn Kelly's boobs squeaking like two beach balls together. And
which is art when you think about it.
Maxim just gagged. Maxim's like, oh.
I wonder if she'll send us like a cease and desist.
I'd be honored.
That would be cool.
I want one review saying this is disturbing and one cease and desist. And then I'll wrap this up.
Yeah.
And then I'll be out of your hair.
Yeah. We'll go back to.
But until then, just like you have your Goodreads list, I have my 2 milestones that I want to reach with this pod. And it's to be in trouble with the law a little.
Yeah. Just to have a little bit of a knock on my reputation.
I want Megyn Kelly to knock with those knockers on my door and use her cross bedazzled necklace as a nunchuck. And me being like, no, I'll stop. That's what I want.
What a beautiful image that is.
And sit with that.
And it's to think that 30 seconds ago, we were having a really deep conversation about how we identify.
Our self-concept, our ego deaths. But anyway, yeah, I think that was a reaction, like just in general about, maybe I told you this, but just like our nation's insistence on needing to work like around the clock the way we do, and like how that's just a given, and how it's just completely not in other parts of the world. And these are people who are, their worlds and their systems are set up where they don't have to be working from fucking 9 to 6 for 5 days a week to like kind of eke by.
Yeah. America has done an amazing job of hijacking everyone's sense of self.
Sure.
And making sure that they feel extremely identified with their income and the consumerist things that their income provides them. Like there's stuff about this that's like actually academic and smart, but like the thing with like cars, like Americans in cars, like first of all, they like structured this entire place to where if you don't have a car, like you basically are shit out of luck and can't get anywhere. But like the coordinated effort to make sure that people assigned like value, like, and a sense of self-worth to their automobile.
Yeah.
And then like, in order to afford that, you have to make a certain amount of money. Therefore, you have to reach a certain level. Therefore, you have to care about where you are and like the strata and shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, it goes so deep. And like, I've always said this, like, like, I think it's really like, I don't know why I'm bringing it back to 9/11, but
here we
like,
buckle up, folks.
The fact that this like formative thing in like our history is this like memorable hijacking, and it's like they're hijacking us, and it's like, no, you're hijacking us. Like I don't know. There's a lot going on. It goes very deep, and everybody should watch like Hypernormalization or Century of the Self. Century of the Self. Good documentary.
Where can I find?
On YouTube.
On YouTube.
On YouTube.
On YouTube.
And it's like long and it's like many different parts and it's kind of uploaded in like a haphazard fashion on YouTube, but you can watch it on there. Actually, you should watch it because we could talk about it on this podcast.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. I'll add it to my reading list. It
does make you like, it fully is like a wormhole that you will never get out of. Like once you can't unsee once you've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. I feel like this is like kind of like a very like dumbed down version of that a little bit. But like we were in this bar the last night and this bartender was just chatting us up and he was talking about like, he's basically just like a serial entrepreneur, but not in like a gross, like venture capital type of way. Like he likes opening bars and he likes being in different parts of Europe, whatever. And so he was just talking to us about like what plans he had next. And like, they just sounded he sounded busy, but it sounded like, he was just moving in a way that like really suited his passions and his needs. And then he was like, so what's next for you guys? And Parker and I are like, work on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Work out like
deliverables.
It just felt so unimaginative.
Yeah.
Like we literally didn't know how to answer the question beyond being like, we go back to our jobs on Monday.
Right.
And then we sit and our eyes bleed and we refresh flights for what our next trip can be maybe sometime next year because we're all out of vacation days.
That's so brutal.
Yeah. But it was, again, it's like, it's a very silly but poignant example of just like our time is hijacked. Like we just
completely
we have no option but to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say something but it completely left my mind. Yeah, it's very liberating to sort of step outside of the structure. And I mean, I still feel like totally ball and chain sometimes.
Sure.
But I no longer see my identity as wrapped up in like where I work or what I do for work. And that's why I get so irritated when people are like, how's work? And I'm like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. I've gotten a little bit better about it, but I think like my greatest fear, and it's not greatest fear, that's so silly, but like the notion of being laid off, like puts a pit in my stomach for some reason.
Yes.
We've talked about this.
Yeah.
Like I find that so scary and for so many reasons, but, and I don't know if it's like, again, it's probably the lack of stability thing. Like, well, what do I do? I'm exhausted about the idea of like fucking updating my resume and like whoring myself out to potential companies. Like there's the work, but I think the root cause, of course, is like the instability thing. And so I've had to do a lot of work around like, okay, this could happen. Like, is it going to be the worst thing that happens to you if it does? Like, yes, it's going to suck, but like, you'll be okay if it does. But I have to do a lot of work around that because, there is a lot of my identity that's wrapped up in the stability of what I do for a living.
Yeah, no, it is so interesting because like I have the same thing and I constantly am worried about like losing my source of income.
Yeah.
I hate what I do. I'm so over it. I am so done with like, I just, it's not what I want my future to look like. And so eventually I will have to end that relationship.
Sure.
Like if I'm going to be doing what moving in the direction that I want to go. And yet I'm still like, but if they reject me, then like
it hurts so much more.
Right. Or something. I don't know. But it's like, it's funny because that would be such a gift in so many ways.
Sure.
Like to not have to do this stuff that like, when I think about it, my energy depletes by like 20%.
Of course. Yeah.
I just see my stamina like I'm in a video game and it's just like, ooh,
oh, totally.
Like,
like life bar at zero.
Yeah, zero.
I'm with you. But yeah, it's like if you view yourself as someone who's like smart and worthy and like has something interesting and compelling to offer and say, like being told that you're actually disposable is like probably the worst type of ego death ever.
Well, it's also like how when you are like in a relationship with someone, like let's just like if you are enter into a relationship with someone that you're kind of like settling.
Sure.
and then like they inevitably end up breaking up with you, speaking from experience.
I'm like, this is a crazy hypothetical.
Like who's ever done
an
that?
imaginative little brain.
But it like you didn't even really want that.
Yeah. No, of course.
So,
but it's the rejection where it's like, well, no, I wanted it to be on my terms, of course. Like the fact that you got to tell.
But I think also like it has to do with like, this is what I thought I was deserving of, even though it was less than what I want in my core. And like, I feel the same way with jobs where it's like, this isn't really what you want. So it actually would make a lot of sense if like vibrationally this didn't work out.
Sure.
But we still have to like, it's like that going back to like the grieving process of like, well, that version of myself doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. And the ego dystonic kind of like nature of like having to deal with something that feels really at odds with how you view yourself.
Yeah.
Even if that thing is a good thing.
Right.
So anyway, with 15 minutes left.
How do we get here?
Well, let's see. Where do we go from here?
Well, we have a closing segment that we do.
We do. So maybe by the grace of God, we do that. We do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do just want to apologize to everyone for sort of who I've been today.
Yeah. I've got a lot of confessional work to do.
Look, you know, when Idina Menzel sometimes was singing Let It Go, and she didn't hit those notes sometimes.
No, she didn't.
But most of the time she does. And she's Idina Menzel, and she's never not going to be Idina Menzel.
Absolutely.
Except for, of course, when she is Adele Dazeem. But
and then things are not so
and
great.
Then everything's off the table then.
I brought Adele Dazeem to the table today, I think.
Me too.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But what I'm saying is,
we'll hit our high note next time.
You don't have to always be good at podcasting. Okay.
And actually, hey, that's not advice from us. That's advice from Maxim. That's advice from like
that's everybody.
All of the most important people in the world. I think of podcasting.
Jesus maybe probably said that.
Absolutely. Like, of Nazareth.
Of Nazareth.
That's the Jesus you speak of?
Right. He was like, thou shalt not kill, and you don't always have to be good at podcasting.
Oh my, he was so real for that.
And he was so real for that.
He was so real for that.
And then that's why he got executed like he did.
I know, because he was speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
As J of N did.
Because those people thought that everyone had to be a good podcaster, and they were really steeped in that in the culture. So,
no, of course.
Yeah. Judas vibes.
major Judas
Judas
vibes.
was known for like really cracking the whip when it came to people's podcasts. Like he
said, I want 3 clips out of you a week.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting like 10K to, you know, if you're not cracking the 10K threshold on each one, then to the cross with you.
To the cross with you.
Yeah. So I think we're off to the cross after this.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that.
The bedazzled one that sits between the 2 crests of
I'll be looking snatched.
Megyn Kelly's tatas.
Yeah, it's that cross.
It's that. And if you're wondering, it's that cross. Yeah.
It's going to be comfy cozy.
Cool. So message in a bottle. Let's get into it. So we learned last time that missive is not a good thing.
Actually, I looked it up. I looked it up again yesterday.
Just to make sure.
It's actually fine.
Oh, okay. So in that case, message in a bottle is our closing segment. And it's when we send a little missive into the ether, into the proverbial sea. It's a love message to something that's brought us joy, something that's tickled us, something that's centered us. After the turmoil that is the hour and 15 minutes that comes before this, it's actually kind of nice to end on this note, we found.
Yeah, you're so right about that.
So real for that.
Do you want to go first?
I'm going to go first.
Okay.
My message in a bottle is silly goofy, but it goes out to New York City-specific ads on subways. Oh my God. They're so out of pocket. I saw one today that said, we're putting more solar panels on rooftops than there are bodega cats in New York. I said, you're going to have to attach a number to that because I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I have no...
I'm like, I actually don't see a ton of bodega cats. Like, I feel like they're kind of a rare find.
Right, like once in a while I see one, but I think we probably need more solar panels than that.
Yeah. Or like, it'll be like, marketing software as cheap as your dollar slice. And you're like,
God,
what the hell?
Yeah.
Like randomly cute, but also don't bring our city into this like that. just works.
Right. You're so right. But so you're saying that they're good?
They're just so funny to see because I'm like, what room of non-New Yorkers created these? There was maybe like one person who lived in New York after college. And then they're all like maybe in some boardroom in Chicago somewhere. And they're like, what do New Yorkers like? Rats, pizza, bodega cats.
Yeah.
We've been boiled down to that holy trinity by most ad agencies, it seems.
Well, and so many of them like have nothing to do with the city of New York. Like,
of course not.
Like the street easy ones, it makes sense.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But then it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm like, you were just trying to get my attention about like a marketing automation software on the 6 train. And so you thought that bringing my 600 square foot apartment into it would, catch my eye.
Right. And honestly, it does.
Oh, it totally. Yeah. I mean, like I love those little ads.
Yeah. They are appealing to a very specific type of person that, again, I don't identify as, but
yeah,
I'm happy for them.
Yeah. So anyway, my love note goes out to the people who are really trying on behalf of this city.
They're trying so hard to sell their digital products.
Totally.
Their project management software.
Yeah. And
more power to them.
And props. More power to them. So anyway, that's my message in a bottle.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
I wish I had more to say about that, but I don't.
I know. I'm trying to think of like more funny like examples of that I saw recently.
I was like racking my brain, but of course there's like something's wrong with me. Like there's something happening in there right now, as you probably could tell from this podcast.
Sure.
And so like any little quippy things that I may have been able to scrounge up just simply don't exist inside the void of my... It's the eclipse. We didn't talk about this, but it's the fucking eclipse.
You are so real for bringing that up.
Thank God we discovered that before the end.
Well, and like, thank God we can blame whatever this is on something, because Jesus Christ.
And I feel
I had an
so
objectively normal day. Like there's no reason that my brain should be seeping out of my ears the way that it is.
I did hear that this eclipse in particular is like kind of unpredictable.
Oh.
And I was kind of like, well, we're going to go record our podcast and it's always good.
Of course.
And then of course I'm like, well, sometimes it's not.
Well, as Jesus once said, not every podcast has to be your best.
But yeah, so that's why it's like this.
Yeah, that's why it's like this. The sun's all messed up. The sun and the moon are in cahoots and it's not doing good things for us.
There's some conjunction. There's something. Okay, well, I'm going to do my message in a bottle now.
Wrap it up, sister.
My message in a bottle goes out to alfalfa sprouts.
Hey.
I have a lot of things to say about alfalfa sprouts.
I do too, actually.
Okay, good.
You go, obviously. It's
Number
your message.
1, alfalfa sprouts. First of all, it's fun to say.
Totally.
Number 1, they smell really bad, but they taste good.
They do be smelling like farts.
They smell like farts, but they taste good.
Yeah.
And I think that's like kind of that's kind of touching. Like it's like, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a food by its smell.
Totally. It's like a Brussels sprout.
It's like that. Yeah, I guess sprouts in general.
Totally. Like roasting a Brussels sprout, you will walk into an apartment with a freshly roasted Brussels sprout and you will say, there's a sewage backup in here.
And then
someone will say, no, these are my balsamic glazed Brussels sprouts.
And you will go ahead and fall in love with that person.
Yeah, of course.
But anyway, so that's the number 1 thing. And then number 2, I feel like alfalfa sprouts are teaching me about abundance because they come in a box, like a little, the ones that I recently bought. And no matter how many sprouts I take,
there's more.
And it's I never even make a dent. Like I'm not going to be able to eat all these sprouts. And it's like, I will continue to eat sprouts over and over and over again. And it's just like the sprouts that keep on sprouting.
And you know what's lovely about them? It's not like parsley where like you buy a full head of parsley and it goes bad like seemingly overnight. Mm-hmm. And you also can't buy a parsley. Like you have to buy, a bushel, several bushels. Alfalfa sprouts have staying power. Like there's a pretty decent shelf life to an alfalfa sprout.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll also say about an alfalfa sprout. They're kind of like the natural chip in a sandwich.
I love that.
You know what I mean?
It adds a little bit of a crunch.
A little bit of crunch.
Yeah.
But it's a refreshing crunch. It's a little watery.
It's cooling.
It's like a little bit, it's kind of like I feel like actually like cucumbers in sandwiches or pickles in sandwiches can add the same
Mhm.
type of intrigue, but there's a mouthfeel to an alfalfa sprout that is a little naughty.
I also just like genuinely love the taste of them, and like I think they make me feel good.
Yeah. What do you? How are you eating them? On
lately-
salads? On sandwiches?
Sandwiches? Lately, I've been putting them on my avocado toast in the
Oh
morning.
my god!
And oh my god!
Decadent.
And it actually came from ChatGPT. Because I had a day where I was like, okay, I can't get into this because it's A, too embarrassing, and B,
We're like
way
in
too
the
much-
45-second countdown timeline. Yeah.
But basically, I've been working with ChatGPT to like create this character of me.
Yeah.
But like it's the ideal,
story of you.
the story of me, but it's like the version of myself that I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was having a day where I was like feeling really bad
Mm-hmm.
and depressed, and so I can't believe I'm doing this. This is going to be really embarrassing. Everyone's
But
gonna
I
be
want to
like,
see the sound waves of this episode because I have a hunch that it's a good one based on the sound waves alone.
whatever.
But
Anyway,
the police would disagree.
Our 4 fans are going to be like, remember when you guys were good?
Oh,
Like, remember Pout Pout Fish? That was like a fun episode.
Pout Pout. We need to get back to Pout Pout. Yeah, that
But
was our
anyway,
righteous path. Keep going.
I asked ChatGPT like how my character would do a day like when she was feeling bad.
Sure.
And it gave me like it basically said like she would let herself just like be on the couch for a little bit and like lay down. And I was like, that's preach. But then I did that and I was kind of bored. And so I was like, what would she do next? And then they were like,
You are your own sim character in real life.
Literally. I'm like having ChatGPT tell me what to do. And then as soon as it gave me, it was like, she would like go on a walk and like, even though it's raining, and like it was raining that day, I didn't even tell it.
Yeah.
It was like, even though it was raining, like she would go on a walk and then she would go and like make avocado toast, and like she would get some greens and like put whatever. And it told me what to make. It told me what to do. And I was like, am I really going to do this? And then I did. And that's how I bought the sprouts. And then I came home and I ate it, and it genuinely made me feel better.
Oh my God. You are an automatron.
This is what you do.
I feel like
This is what
I feel like I don't even know who I'm sitting across anymore.
This is what happens when you are like, you've had so much solitude that you have nothing to bounce your reflection off of. So then you have to work with robots to help you become a human being.
Well, I guess the good news is that the robot is being like, make yourself a yummy breakfast, honey.
Oh, we have such a good
And
relationship.
take a little nap.
It loves me. And I love it.
And I'm liking that you're befriending it, because I do think that whatever you manifest for the character of Carey, hopefully some good juju will rub off on the character of Floundering the podcast.
Well, and that's very much part of why this is all happening.
of course,
Because
Maxim is like, you girls can't come back here. I am
Max was like,
scared.
I've already packed up and I need to leave.
I am so scared. Yeah, I know the backpack has been zipping. No, it's
We
a good.
hear all.
We're literally. It's a good reminder that it's time to.
Yeah,
GT,
we gotta wrap this up.
GT fuck out. Well, wow, what a ride this has been.
Well,
Adore you, sister.
adore you.
Adore our school.
Adore our school. And we haven't been talking to the school as much recently.
I know what we do for the 4 of you who are here, and maybe after this, the none of you. Thank you for all the time you've given.
Yeah.
And if you choose not to invest anymore after this point, hey,
Can't blame
no
you.
worries.
No worries at all.
No worries whatsoever.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Love the school. Love you.
bye.
We'll see you soon.